today we'll be discussing ChatGPT and generative AI in legal writing, specifically how attorneys can augment themselves with this fantastic, powerful tool, this unknown tool that has a lot of potential in terms of taking on manual tasks as possible while responding to intellectual property challenges, data security, confidentiality, and of course, how to do this as ethically as possible. And I am joined by the very talented Darrell Bennett Jr., who is a Harvard-trained legal advocate, published author, and the founder of the B Squared Global Group. Darrell, thank you for your time, and welcome to our first ever live CLE presentation.
Well, thank you, Chris. I mean, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you all that are going to join us, that have joined us, that are already joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about, like Chris said, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT and generative AI. If you're interested in a training at your firm or your organization, please reach out to us. We'd love to be able to do that for you, whether it's for your team or just one-on-one. So let's kind of start. And look, I mean, we want to make this as interactive as absolutely possible. There's going to come a segment where we're going to show you the platform live and do some things. If you have any questions in the meantime, just go ahead and put those in the chat, or if there's any things that you'd like us to, just show live. We can't promise we'll get to it, but we'd at least like to see it, and we would love to try to include it within this hour. So let's just start by defining our terms of art, if we could, Chris. ChatGPT is a proprietary software owned by OpenAI. Generative AI is just the general term for artificial intelligence that is meant to generate human responses in real time. So I just want to be clear about that as we start to talk about ChatGPT, we're talking about a specific product within the generative AI world. But of course, there will be many more. We know Google is working on Bard, and there are several others, of course, that are, in the mix. What really makes artificial intelligence different than what we've seen in Web 2.0 and just the internet in general is that it is meant to create. It's meant to create, which is a powerful tool, especially for us, because it allows us to use this, as we're going to show, in senses like summarizing or using it to kind of help with writer's block. But it also can be a problem because there's questions around ownership. There's questions around citing. We do know recently that there are certain judges who, have not been happy when they've discovered that, wait a minute, this is a memo that was written almost entirely by ChatGPT. And as you would know, of course, President Biden just signed something called the AI Bill of Rights, or the blueprint for the AI Bill of Rights, which is, of course, not a law, but it is some sort of framework as we begin to start talking about how AI is taking over more and more parts of our lives. So let's go ahead and get started. Is there anything you want to say, Chris, as we just kind of jump right in?
Really, the only thing I think a lot of attorneys probably have in the back of their minds is this might be likened to the moon landing. This is like a watershed moment, not just now. You highlighted this very well, because ChatGPT, OpenAI is like the first one that we all can kind of gravitate towards. And the fact that we're seeing so much of this, there's probably a great sense of, how can I augment myself, but how can I also keep this contained? Because this is new. And in previous discussions, I've likened it to like a tool, that an owner's manual that people might have. How good are you at flipping through this owner's manual, like in instructions? Do people actually read them, terms and conditions? Or are you going to scroll down and just click that dialog box? And like anything else, we have those examples of those practitioners, those great and bad actors that have misused this in improper use. But there is so much that's happening within this space, and those manual tasks that people might want to drop. That's why this is so exciting and so top shelf for attorneys, because they want to use this, but it's just a question of, how do I do it well? And then maybe how can I do it better than someone else? And then how can I do it ethically so I can save time and kind of pass it on to my client?
Absolutely. And that's a good segue. Let's go ahead and start with some of the precautions. One of the things, of course, that is at the top of everybody's mind is bias. Not just in AI, but just in general. But bias in AI refers to the presence of unfair, prejudiced behavior in some of these responses. What we're finding in the context of legal work is that it's critical to be aware that AI models, i.e. ChatGPT, which of course we're going to to show live in a little bit, can have inherent biases that are present in their data. Remember, the AI, though artificial intelligence, is created by human trainers. So, if the humans have bias, and we all do on some level in some way, then that could be replicated in what we're seeing output from generative AI. Part of what the blueprint for AI rights really sought to root out is what they're calling algorithmic biases. And what we're finding is algorithmic biases are really showing up really strongly in two places: hiring decisions and credit decisions. That's where we're seeing it first. So what does that mean? That means that now biases that maybe, humans have had or may have shown up in certain places and spaces in these arenas are now sort of getting crystallized or codified into algorithms that are perpetuating and exacerbating certain trends. So, of course, we have, to be on guard, to exercise caution, be mindful that these biases can occur, and to make sure that all of the legal research or assistance that is artificially, intelligently powered doesn't lead to discriminatory or unfair outcomes. So this is probably a good place to start because, like you said, like I said at the moon landing, it's so much that's new and it's really a moving ball. What we're finding is there are more and more organizations. We're talking social justice organizations. We're talking about organizations that look out for people and communities that have historically been on the shorter end of the stick of these discriminatory and unfair outcomes, really speaking up to say, wait a minute, let's make sure that AI isn't exacerbating that. So this is why, even as we put whatever we're going to put into the ChatGPT later when we do the live examples, and it is, I think it is a phenomenal tool. I don't think it is anything like it. I just think it's an amazing thing. It's important that we're reading what comes out of it and that we're aware that it is pulling from the database or let me put it this way, the set of knowledge that's already available, and in some cases might be exacerbating certain trends that we're trying to root out. So that's one of the things. Hallucinations. I'm not talking about hallucinations in the other context, but hallucinations in the context of AI refers to when a model generates information that is factually incorrect or makes things up. It's really interesting here, Chris, that the AI models really are meant to, I'm thinking of iRobot with Will Smith, the movie a long time ago. It's really made to mirror human behavior. And so what do humans do when they don't know what they're talking about sometimes? Well, we make things up. And so AI tends to do the same thing. We're going to make sure that we show some of the limitations of, let's say, AI and specifically ChatGPT. One of the limitations is that its database only goes as far up to January of 2022. I have found that when you enter certain things in that happened after 2022, like the Jackson Women's Health case, sometimes it gives an answer, sometimes it doesn't. So I think we're kind of seeing how, in real time, how sometimes it can make things up. Lawyers, of course, need to be cautious when using AI-generated content, especially for critical legal documents, because what we're calling hallucinations, more factually incorrect data or just misinformation, can lead to inaccuracies and can have major, of course, legal consequences. Could I just say here, Chris, I think it's important to note, because I know this is being used in many different ways. I have a niece. She's using it for her homework. I don't advise it. She's using it for her homework. I know folks that are using it in college. Because all of the information that comes out of generative AI platforms, specifically, let's say ChatGPT, is stored somewhere. Mm-hmm. There is a way to put that information back into ChatGPT and say, did you write this? And what we're finding is this is how some cases judges are finding out that this information was from a generative AI source, because the generative AI source was sort of telling you later. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right. And
Uh,
embellish as well. It's like a game of telephone. I mean, like that's the contained part of it. And you hinted at this too. You're seeing this like with a lot of judges' decisions, if they're going to be like having express kind of terms and conditions themselves. If you're using this AI tool, how did you use it and why? Do you have to disclose that to me? If not, you might risk kind of like a reprimand. It might depend on the jurisdiction, but we're seeing this in at least 5 that I'm aware of in recent months. And there's likely going to be more with this because it's such a new tool. You have like your old guard and your new guard. That's why this is such a top shelf kind of conversation, because it's like, how do I use this? If I'm going to use it and keep it contained, then what do I have to kind of disclose? Like, what are those ethical guidelines? Or just like that one judge that might be a little salty when it comes to if you're going to use it, how and why? Why did you feel the need to do that? Because they might be using it themselves. And then there's a whole other question. How are you going to use it and why? And like, who's watching the Watchmen, that sort of thing.
That's a good point. And then it kind of leads to, okay, even if you are using it, how do you cite it? I mean, do you cite ChatGPT? And who owns that? And how does that look? So that's actually a perfect segue into intellectual property concerns. Lawyers should be mindful, of course, of IP issues when using AI. AI generated content raises a lot of concerns about copyright and ownership. Just a quick story here for those of you that are sort of in the entertainment world, you would know that recently there was a song that was released by Drake, the musical artist known as Drake, that really did well and got a lot of buzz on the internet, only for him to disavow it and say, that wasn't me. I know it sounded like me. I know it looked like me. They were even talking about releasing a music video. I'm talking about the folks that had created this AI, but it was, this song from AI, but it was not him. So the question becomes, well, who owns it? If it's in the voice of this person, who owns the copyright? Who owns, who has ownership over it? So it's important to understand the terms of service of the AI platform. I know nobody likes to read the fine print, which is why I think, they put it in fine print, but understanding the terms of the AI platform and clarifying ownership over AI generated materials and legal documents and agreements is really important, because that can certainly lead to problems later on, especially if there's a profit share involved, or if it's your client who's, of course, somehow profiting off of it, or could stand to lose profit as a result of it not being clarified, at the beginning.
Right. Kind of going back to intent. What is the intent of it? What is the intent of your client? And just it kind of goes both ways in terms of being above board with that transparency as well. And once you kind of enter it in that public domain, I can imagine, and I'm sure a lot of attorneys are asking themselves as well, this might be very difficult to put that back into like your own sphere. Like you don't want to give up your competitive advantage and share it and mishandle something, because it's maybe getting harder and harder to kind of have that front and center. So this is again why, if you're going to have like compliance checks and just like any software, any tool, ensure that you're using it as well and as ethically as possible.
You're absolutely right. And I think, that's why it's important, even speaking about intent, to understand and kind of just to raise the conversation here beyond just the AI, because all of the AI is just a conduit for where the internet is going. Many of you have already heard of Web 3.0. Well, Web 3.0 is the newest iteration of the internet, which is really around people being able to own their own data, and it's sort of duality, and sort of it being group ownership, no one owning it, so to speak. So let me just say this: OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, is not the same as open source. You may have heard of open source. Open source is just the sense that it's freely available to the public. It's in the public domain. And once it's in the public domain, as you know, it's hard to take it back out. So I think what we're seeing the internet move into this new phase of collective ownership, public domain works. So I think as we start talking about IP concerns, it's almost like trying to use a new technology in an old way. Right. But and to be clear, the ChatGPT in itself is not what the Web 3.0 is, but it is what is being used to advance Web 3.0. So I think what we're seeing is that there's more of an intent to make more things public use, and collective ownership. So, IP concerns as we understood them 5, 10 years ago, and even now, I think that concept is just shifting overall. So something to be aware of. Assessing risk, like anything else, attorneys, legal advocates, of course, should conduct a thorough risk assessment before relying on AI in their practice. This involves, of course, evaluating the reliability, the accuracy, and the security of the system. We're going to get into that a little bit later, things that you can do to anonymize, I think I said it right, anonymize the information that you're putting out there to make certain that you are not putting confidential information or client data in the public domain, because once it's out there, of course. Assessing how the AI system handles confidential legal information is important to understand potential legal and, of course, ethical considerations of AI generated content. It can, of course, we know incorporating AI can offer numerous benefits. But of course, as we also understand, it could also give rise to a plethora of challenges. And we're seeing those challenges play out really in real time.
Right, right. And I just want to quickly reiterate this, that for people that may have been a few minutes late to joining us for our first ever live webinar, for the Q&A, like the passcodes that you'll need for your quiz. And I'll repeat this again in a couple different intervals. And if you want more detailed instructions, I suggest you check the course landing page for this on our CLE marketplace. But the first passcode is legal precedent. For anyone who may have missed it, legal precedent. And there will be 2 more throughout the presentation.
Yes, thank you for that, Chris. And I just saw something I wanted to answer. So ChatGPT is a AI product. And when we say AI, I know we just got to be careful about throwing around these terms. It is artificial intelligence as opposed to, of course, human intelligence. Generative AI, meaning that it is meant to generate human-like responses in real time. I'm just sort of responding to a question. And it is an AI product. But if you sort of think about it, I mean, AI is, if we think of the pie, ChatGPT is really just one slither of that, a small slither. But it is what's top of mind because it's what people are using more than not in order to create. And it's the one that is free right now, at least 3.5. We'll talk about that, the difference between ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT 4.0, which is not free, which is why more people are using it. And it's to their advantage for it to be free because they're learning how humans are using it. When I say they, the company is, helping to hone this product as they understand how it's being used, what ways people are using it for. So it's an interesting concept, even for attorneys. I mean, are we using it more to summarize? Are we using it more to, just to get some ideas? Are we using it more to write memos? We're using it more, in those ways. So just wanted to be responsive to that.
Circles back to intent, and I guess how you can have that different level of risk tolerance that might be kind of like an elastic band, continue to stretch it. And that might change again as the tech and the requirements, the need of what this tech can do for you are going to change and continue to evolve over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's certainly going to change. I think of the GDPR, which, is a body of law that was passed in the EU, which deals with data privacy. It's like as soon as that was promulgated in the European Union, which affects, of course, any company that has a website that is being reached there, now comes AI, which sort of changes it all again and opens up a whole new bag of can of worms, as it were. So getting started, how do you get started? Again, for those of you that just joined, you're going to really like this because we're going to do a live demonstration so you see in real time what's happening. But here we're just sort of giving some background. The first thing is that you want to choose a reputable AI provider. For this demonstration and for the context is here, we're going to be using ChatGPT. That's not the only one. There's Google Bard. There's other ones that are in the mix. And then there are AI products that are not necessarily creating writing materials, but AI we know is being used in all facets now. So I don't know, I was just reminded of a product called Petivia. We have a client that's working on that, and Petivia, it actually uses AI to look at the litter box of the cat and the weight of the litter box to determine what's going on with your cat's health and whether or not maybe your cat needs to go to the veterinarian. So AI is being used in so many different ways, but we're just talking about in the context of writing, composing, that sort of thing. So you want to do your research, of course, to determine what's a well-established and reputable service provider that offers a secure platform. We have a duty that many others in other professions don't have, and that is really a duty to confidentiality to make certain that whatever we're using on behalf of our clients is not going to, be something that they're going to see later pop up in a public context. Ensure that they have a track record for data privacy and security. We would sort of encourage you to use your professional credentials. This creates that separation between what you're doing personally, what you're doing professionally. You might, of course, have one personally for what you do personally, but when you're working with things with your client, so using that professional email, whether it's your own firm or a firm that you're, a part of, when creating that account helps maintain that clear separation. So that's the first step. Of course, you want to create the account after you've done research. And then obtaining access. So reviewing the terms of service and privacy policy, carefully reading and understanding what are those terms of service, what is the privacy policy, ensuring that it complies with ethical standards for confidentiality. We know, this is not to call out any organization here, I guess I am calling out, like the Facebooks of the world. We know that just because they say that they're doing one thing, time only tells that maybe they are or not. So that's why it's really incumbent upon us to make certain that we'll get to this later, anonymizing whatever data we put in there, or, potentially sensitive information. But it's really important that we do our due diligence in the beginning to really get a sense of what's their track record. Are they already in court for, putting things in the public domain that they shouldn't be putting in the public domain, and that might be a sort of cautionary tale to stay away from it. If we're working in a legal team, setting up access controls as to who's able to use the AI platform, and like you've been saying, Chris, intent, why they're using it, sort of placing guardrails around that. This helps, of course, in managing and tracking proper use.
You put a lot of stock into reviews, or should attorneys put a lot of stock into reviews, because it's really, sometimes they can be tailored to your organization entirely. Take it for a test drive, have it for a demo version, but the demo version you get, like a lot of industries have something that is specific to attorneys, specific to doctors, specific to nurses. It's going to have a different need and a different goal and maybe a different pitfall. Something else. It might need upgrades. It may have, where's your data retention? Where is your storage hub going to be located? All those things. I mean, you're going to find something. And of course, the jurisdiction, you mentioned GDPR. That's a great, that's going to very importantly, very much so where you are. California is going to have a different requirement, a little bit more than other jurisdictions, right? So it's just, if we're going to take something out and like a new vehicle has that new AI kind of smell, but how do I ensure it's going to do what I want it to, or ensuring that it's the right one, that it fits my needs? Because those needs that might change over time. So people might say, oh, wow, this has 5 stars, but how good is it going to be for the specific type of law that I am going to practice? Or if I'm going to shift gears, if I'm a general practitioner, if I'm a solo practitioner, I've been using this for X amount of time, shifting to another area, it can be a little bit stop and go.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think I would say a couple of things to that. The first thing I would say is all reviews we know are not created equal. I would be a little concerned or wary of reviews that the provider themselves has the ability to either take down or move if it's on their website. We're going to read their website for their terms of conditions, but for reviews, we really want to go to a place where they don't have access to sort of sanitize their pages, as it were. Looking at things like Reddit, public databases, I think helps. If you're starting to see common themes, common stories come out about data breaches, common themes about confidentiality, common themes, I think that's a cautionary tale. But I think like with all of this, we have to err on the side of caution. So we would want to probably give a little more credence to the negative stories, especially if they keep coming up, because ultimately, this is such a new area of law. And I mean, I say law in lowercase because it's not even law yet. It's such a new area. And it's being used in so many different ways. And I kind of feel like it's the Wild Wild West now. And until there's real regulation, which is what I think Biden's, this blueprint AI Bill of Rights was really meant to do, is to sort of begin the conversation around, hey, there needs to be some sort of regulation around this. Just to say this, because, I know a lot of times we just think of it in the context of writing things. I mean, these AI tools are being used to create NFTs. These AI tools are being used to create patterns around trading. I just had a trader that's a client of mine asking the question, well, if I rely on AI to do the trading, how does that work when it comes to the ones that we serve? Am I is it a shortcut to my fiduciary duties? Because the AI, of course, isn't licensed. The AI didn't get a Series 7. The AI didn't go through, the complicated sort of frameworks that you had to go through in order to get that financial license. So there's so many things that are new here.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
ensuring confidentiality, there's several things that I think we want to cover. The first is using a strong, unique password, enabling some level of two-factor authentication. Who likes the two-factor authentication? I know it's like, an extra layer, but really having that zero trust, that's another way of putting it, a zero trust approach, which means that even if you're using the same browser, even if it's the same phone or tablet or device, but setting it up such that every time someone from your firm or your organization or you yourself goes into that AI platform has to put in those credentials again is really going to be important, and to help really just safeguard those things. Ensuring that the data transmission to and from the AI server is encrypted to protect sensitive legal information. When I say ensure, all we can do is either rely on their words, sort of see what's out there. But we know that if we start seeing several reviews that are saying otherwise, or lawsuits, that puts us on guard to know this might not be something we need to use, or certainly need to restrict it really to the point where it's nothing that's being used at all that could lead back to a client. Data anonymization. If possible, when using AI tools, and when possible, making certain that we are sensitizing that data, making certain that there's nothing there that could be in the public domain. I want you to treat it like this. Anything you put into it, and we're going to, later do something with ChatGPT, anything you put in, just pretend that it's going to be seen later by a lot of other people. So we don't want to put anything in there that could in any way be pieced together to point back to our client, especially now, because again, these companies are using human behavior on these AI platforms to determine how is it being used, what ways that they need to tweak it, and what ways the public really wants to use it. So it's not just that you are looking up information as Web 2.0 would do, as putting in something in Google would do. You're actually helping to create what is being output, if that makes sense, because it's creating something, then it's putting it out, and then as we search for it again, it's pulling from that same data that's been generated. So we're really in an interesting time with this. Compliance with legal regulations, being aware of the legal regulations, especially, of course, attorney-client privilege, and making certain that it is compliant with that, and ensuring that the artificial intelligence is not compromising that confidentiality in any way. And then limit sharing, avoid sharing confidential case details. Of course, we've already said this, on the platforms, using generic and redacting potential client privacy, and limiting who has access, when they have access, why they have access, to be certain that we're not using it in a way that we don't know. Everybody knows that in the firms, the bigger memos, whatever, a lot of times are written by the folks whose names are not necessarily on it. And whereas before we already had due diligence around that, but if we trusted the person's character, we trusted, they know what they're doing, we might have sort of skimmed through it. Now knowing that more people are using AI, they may not, of course, tell you the junior partner or the junior associate or the summer associate may not be telling you, hey, I just put that in ChatGPT. That's how I was able to do it so easily and so quickly. We really have a responsibility to make sure that we are going over that before we submit it to a client or certainly submit it in any court context.
Yeah, definitely. And as you're talking about responsibility, just as to do my own due diligence with our role for the platform for this live webinar, for anyone that may have missed it or are still joining now, just please ensure just to reiterate that you're following the instructions that you received in the reminder email, especially when it comes to passcodes. So there is going to be that live demonstration using ChatGPT with legal writing in the next very shortly. But the second passcode that I'd like to share with you is arbitration. So the second passcode that I'm going to share with you is arbitration.
Arbitration. And I do see your questions. We're going to get to those questions and we're going to get to them in the order that they were given. So please keep sending them. Also, we're about to do the live demonstration. We have some prompts, but if there's something you want to see us do in real time right in front of you, go ahead and put that in the chat now because that'll be helpful for us as well. But we will definitely get to those questions. I was just taking a sneak peek at some of the questions that are there. Let's go over some tips. This is going to lead us directly into us now, just kind of putting it out, a real-time example. Clear, and you're going to see this more when we do the real-time example, but writing clear instructions is really important. So providing the name, the jurisdiction, relevant details, it really is interesting. This is where it's different than just a simple Google search. You put too much in Google, especially put too many commas, clauses, it gets confusing and it's looking for all of those words. This is not looking for as much as it is creating based on what's out there. So what does that mean? What that means is the more specific you are, and clear about exactly what it is you're looking for. If you're looking for a case and you say, I'm looking specifically about the state issues, or I'm looking for the points that are in contention, or we're looking for the dissenting opinion and how the dissenting opinion has been challenged. I mean, it's going to really give you more specificity. They used to say when I was in elementary school, Chris, you get out of it the more you put into it. Well, right. That's the way we want to look at it with ChatGPT. You want to avoid ambiguity, of course, to the extent that you're able to, not give ambiguous prompts. It's really going to be easier for you. And use legalese when necessary. It is interesting, but yes, it does know SCOTUS. It absolutely knows SCOTUS. It knows some of the legalese, and I mean not all, but some of the more prevalent legal terminology that we use, it's able to pick up on. At least I'm talking about ChatGPT. So you should use it. Of course, if you read and it's something that comes up differently, I put some things in and put it. I'm here in New York. I didn't say that. I'm in New York. And it's sometimes something's popped up in South Carolina, but for the most part, it's going to give you what you've asked for. And if it did put something else out, you're able to correct that.
Right. So an interesting blend of data science and skill, because it's and just like natural ability, I guess, when it comes to button mashing and just like what will work best and what are you throwing at it. And I guess that can be very different pending the case, the task, the legal writing purpose that this attorney is looking for. And I guess how time sensitive that all is as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really meant, look, it's meant to be your friend. I mean, it really is meant to be your friend in that setting clear boundaries. So if there's specific areas, or when I say your friend, like an assistant, a very smart assistant that's not necessarily going to talk back and that's not going to get tired. If there's specific areas you want the AI to focus on or exclude, provide those parameters. Offering context, explaining the background. It can take all of that, using hints. In some cases, you might find that it takes a little longer to generate the answer. That could be for a number of reasons. A lot of people are on it, or it's not clear about what you're saying. You might use that as an opportunity to hone it in a little bit more. So that way you really get exactly what you want. One of the neat things, and we'll show this so you can see it, you can push a button on ChatGPT that says regenerate, it'll reword the answer, almost as if to say, hey, maybe I didn't give you exactly what you wanted, but let me try it again. And it'll reword it and give it to you a little bit more. It'll give it to you a different way. So this is really, really exciting in that way. I know we're coming up. I want us to be able to show, and I know our time is moving ahead of us. Really here, the only thing I wanted to say is using legal abbreviations is fine for the most part, especially the more prominent ones. The platform does understand, but if you find that it doesn't, then you know sort of what to do. What we're going to start with is a live demonstration, and we're going to start with sort of exactly what we have here, providing a summary of the case, including the legal principles as established, and we're going to ask it to focus on a specific issue. So any thoughts while I pull up, because I think that's where we are. Yeah, let's go ahead and pull up the screen share. Well, give me a second to just pull this up.
It's really going to depend on the issue. It's really going to depend on the attorney, on the skill set that they have in terms of using this tool and how it can fit the bill and how I guess tech savvy, the guardrails that are essentially in place, and more. I can imagine there's a few things like a jigsaw puzzle. There's a few things that might be like, what am I missing? How good can this be? And of course, like, how can I ensure that I'm doing my fiduciary duty, those ethical concerns? And it's someone else asking this similar question. Like, those are the things I'm sure attorneys might be kind of ringing through their mind every second. They're pressing that one button and then that next button. And finally, they have the bravery, I suppose, to hit enter and wait for what's going to happen next.
Yes. So I see here, let me just see if I see anything that somebody wants us to put in. I already have a prompt we want us to put in, given the database is not current, effective. Okay, so I don't see anything here. Okay, so I see questions, but those are more general. We're going to get to those. Okay, my name is Darrell J. Bennett, and let me introduce you to ChatGPT, right? This is where it gets exciting. This is the neat thing about it being interactive. We can show it to you. It's not just theoretical. We really want you to see it. Again, this is a one specific AI provider product. And we're not endorsing it in any way. We don't get a check from ChatGPT, but this is just one of the products that's more in mass adoption. The first thing that I want to call out is you're going to see right here, you're going to see the difference between Chat GPT-4, which is the paid version, and Chat 3.5. Well, I'll tell you the difference. Chat 3.5 is just text input. Chat GPT 4.0 takes it to the next level, and you can input images, you can input videos, you can input music, and it will create from that, which is like fascinating. But what we're going through is just the inputting of the text. This is the screen that you would see on your browser once you've logged in. You could also, there's an app. I have the app on my phone. The neat thing is, and just call your attention to it, it does save. So this is why it's really important for us to be careful what we're putting in. It's saving. We know already it's saving everything, but it's showing you that it's saving everything. So if you wanted to go back, to see what it was that you put in for the searches. And this is the screen, of course, that you would see after you have logged in. You've logged in. And so now here we are, and we are going to input some prompts. So the first prompt I want us to input is exactly what we had in the slideshow. We all know the Miranda versus Arizona case.